Well, good evening. Again, it's good to be with you. I'm looking at Mark chapter 5, and there was one verse that sort of stood out. I got to tell you a little bit of the background before I get into the one verse, but the title that I came up with is One Man Can Make a Difference. Just one man can make a difference. Mark chapter 5 speaks about the man that that meets up with Jesus. I think Jesus just gets off the ship, and this man is basically waiting on him to get off of the ship. And this he has many problems. He had a lot of issues. One of them was Satan. Satan was one of his biggest issues. Satan controlled him. This man had Satan all through him. This man was so bad that he even lived in the graveyard. I mean, he wasn't wanted by his own kin people, his own family, his own friends. Probably nobody really wanted him. Men couldn't bind him. I mean, they couldn't chain him up. They tried to chain him up, but he would break the chains. I mean, this guy here just had a real situation that, I mean, that devil that was in him was really giving him a sure enough headache. But here's the thing, the man wanted help. He wanted help. Now, did he understand about Jesus? Did he hear about Jesus? He must have known Jesus. The Bible said that he was willing to worship Jesus, but yet he had this demon in him, this unclean spirit that was in him. He wanted help, and Jesus, I guess, Jesus did help him. I mean, the Bible's clear in the story. I'm fixing to get into it a little bit. Jesus told his demon to just come out of him. I mean, this man really did have some issues. And, you know, all we have to do is look around and try to look at some of our issues, the issues that we have. It's always easier to look around than look down. It's always easier to look at someone else's problem, easier than looking at our problem. We don't think that Satan would be in us, but, you know, just because we don't live in the cemetery, just because we're not having chains placed on our hands and feet, and that we're not eat up with the devil, that doesn't mean that the devil doesn't have havoc. Jesus told his demon to come out of him, and the man immediately wanted to follow Jesus. I mean, I do remember that part about the story. The man wanted to follow Jesus. And I believe if you look down in verse number 18, I believe it is. Let me read it. And when he was come into the ship, he had been possessed with the devil, prayed him that he might be with him. You know, this is after he had gets healed and everything. And then in verse 19 is the verse that I sort of want to hone in on. Howbeit Jesus suffered him not. See, he wanted to follow, but Jesus said no. But he saith unto him, Go home to thy friends and tell them how great things the Lord hath done for thee, and hath had compassion on thee. You know, He told him to go home. Well, if you look back up there in the very top, I think in verse 3 it says, who had his dwelling among the tombs. That's where he lived at. His own family probably didn't even want him. Even though he might have had a home, he certainly wasn't taking advantage of his home. But Jesus told him to go back home and go to your friends. Now, he just didn't tell them to me just to go to his friends. Who are you going to find when you get to your house? You're going to find your family. I believe that his family probably still loved him. So I think that when Jesus said go to your friends, he actually also meant go to everybody. Go and tell everybody. Go to your family. Tell them what I did for you. I mean, this man here had some situations that we hadn't even got into yet. Tell them about my compassion. Just explain to them my compassion. You know, this man here must have knew something was happening, because Jesus gave compassion, and the man felt the compassion. You know what? After all of this was over, he had no more need of the graveyard. He had no more need of a cemetery. He had no more need of a tomb. A tomb is for people that are dead. He's no longer dead now. You might as well said he was dead before Jesus came along. You know that in verse 1, we didn't read it, but this man came to Jesus. Jesus did not come to the man. He was waiting on him to get off the boat. He must have heard of him. He must have knew that he was going to come and he was going to get off the boat. How did he know? I think if I was eat up with a devil, I believe I would be praying and seeking the Lord, wanting the Lord to have mercy on me. I mean, that's just my opinion. He had no more graveyards. He had no more chains. You know, men tried to chain him, and he would end up breaking the chains. I mean, this man, no doubt, had some issues. You know, one place in the Bible where it talked about that he was sitting there after his healing and he ended up having clothes on. So that tells me that maybe he was used to walking around naked. I really don't know, but I want to think that if he was sitting there, he must have had something. Could he have been naked? I guess he could have been. The Bible says that he knew how to cry. He could cry real good. Crying is something that you do when you want relief from something. You want to cry. He was tormented. This man here was tormented. I mean, I can only imagine thinking about how this man had to live in the tombs. I mean, let's face it, you don't go to a cemetery unless you go there to bury somebody. And unless somebody dies, there's nobody that goes to the cemetery very much. So he probably didn't have a whole lot of visitors in the cemetery, especially people, if they knew where he lived at, they surely wouldn't go to the cemetery. They wouldn't go alone. They would go with somebody else. See, this man was messed up. But you know what? He was tortured. I mean, Satan was doing him a number. He was going through torture. He's going through torment. You know, torment happens by someone who tortures somebody. A person that tortures somebody exerts a lot amount of pain. But you know what? He's free now. This man is free. It was noticed. If you go down to verse number 15, it was even noticed. And they came to Jesus and see him that was possessed with the devil, and had the legion sitting and clothed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. The people that knew him was afraid of him. They was shocked. They was in amazement. You know what? A man that is freed is sitting. A man that is freed has got new garments on. I'm not talking about so much the natural garment. I'm talking about the spiritual garment. The Bible says he had a right mind. You know why he had a right mind? Because Jesus gave him a right mind. He gave him a mind all because of the one that was going to be nailed on the cross. The one that was going to die. He also had a mouth. Now, some people might go and say, well, Kenny, you run your mouth a whole lot. Well, maybe so, but I hope that I'm exalting the one that took me out of the tombs. I hope that I'm exalting the one that give me liberty and give me life. And if you're offended by that, oh well. Who cares? I've got a job to do. There might be somebody out here tonight that might be watching this that is eat up with a devil too. And this story is right here in Mark chapter 5. Go get you a Bible and start reading from verse 1 down to verse number, down to verse 20 or 21. Just go read it all. You'll see the story for yourself. He had a mouth, because the Bible even says here, and he departed and began to publish in Decapolis how great things Jesus had done for him, and all men did marvel. They was amazed that this man is no longer in the tombs. He doesn't need the tomb anymore. He's got proof of his change. How many people do you know that you really do know that they have bona fide proof of their change? Let me ask you a question. Has Jesus changed you? And you might go and say, well, what do you mean, Brother Ken? Well, you might not have a devil like this man had, but the Bible says he even cut himself. I think that was torment that I covered. He even took a razor blade and cut himself. I mean, this man was sure enough messed up. Has Jesus changed you? Maybe you might not relate to this man here in the tombs. Maybe you've never lived in the cemetery. But you know what? If we're without Jesus, we might as well say that we live in the cemetery. If you're out there tonight and you're living without Jesus, then you're dead in the eyes of God. You're dead. So Jesus hasn't done anything for you because he hasn't changed you. But he wants to change you just like he changed this man. He gave him a right mind. He gave him new clothes to wear. I don't know if they was new. The Bible didn't say that he had new clothes. It just said that he had clothes on. I mean, you would think that that would be like a no-brainer. Okay, he's got clothes on. No, I want to think that evidently he must have had some new clothes. Because if he didn't have any clothes, he probably picked up some clothes from somewhere. He had a right mind that only was given to him by Jesus. He had a mouth that he could run for his Lord, because now the Lord, see, he wanted to follow Jesus. He wanted to be with Jesus. And Jesus told him right here, howbeit Jesus suffered him not, but saith unto him, go home to thy friends. Go to them friends of yours and tell them how great things the Lord hath done for thee. When was the last time you told something about how great the Lord was for you? That's what it says right here. And hath had compassion on thee. You know, the greatest compassion the Lord will ever give to anybody is the compassion of salvation. I mention it every time I come out here. God can come and do a healing and do a miracle, but if he doesn't change the soul, he's not really accomplished what he wants. I believe this man here evidently must be saved, because he went and published it in the town and everywhere else, the great things Jesus had done for him, and all men did marvel. I'm glad that I know him. And my prayer would be tonight is that whoever has happened to watch this, that you would examine yourself whether he's changed you or not. He changed him, and he can change you. He changed him, and he changed me. And I'm glad that he changed me. I'm glad that I can sit out here tonight and be a fool for Jesus. That's okay with me. I'm glad that he come in and he made a change. And he's willing to make a change in you. All you got to do is admit that maybe you're living in the tombs. Maybe you need to admit that you're tormented. Maybe you need to admit that you've been cutting on yourself with your worry and your aggravation and all of the things that go on in your life. Maybe the Lord might be trying to tell you something. Do you reckon the Lord's trying to tell you something? Maybe so. Go and read it for yourself. Mark chapter 5. Chapter 1 or chapter 5 from verse 1 all the way down to verse number 20. Just go and read it for yourself. Thank y'all for listening.